Hi everyone, I'm Jeannie Briggs and I'm a volunteer with AfghanEvac, and I'm here today for a fireside chat with Seamus Kelleher, and I'm very pleased to be hosting this conversation with Seamus. And what I would like to do is just start by Seamus asking you if you can tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to be doing the work you're doing today.
Thank you so much, Jeannie, and thanks for having me. I feel so honored to work with you and the people that are doing extraordinary work during these times. We'll touch on that in just a few minutes. But let me just give you a little bit of background how I came to be here. And I'm like about 68 or something like that. I think it was my birthday last week. I stopped counting a while back. But I'm a musician. I've been a musician all my life. I'm from Ireland. That's why I talk funny. And I came here when I was about 20, and I've been playing music ever since then. I started playing music when I was 14 professionally in Ireland, and I've continued to do so. I've traveled all over the world. I've played in Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, and most major venues. And I've been very blessed with a great career. But at age 20, I suffered really, really bad depression, anxiety, uh, and I was hospitalized for about 5 weeks in a psychiatric hospital. Now, at the time, I was doing really well. My music career was going gangbusters. I had a record out. I was in the papers every day, playing to 1,000, 2,000 people a night. So, for a 20-year-old, everybody thought I had it all. But the fact was, inside, I was kind of dying. Things were really bad. And Ireland was on the verge of civil war at the time with the troubles over there. There was a lot of sectarian violence. And what else? I had a very abusive school situation. And my parents were alcoholics. So, yeah, there was a lot of things conspiring against against me, I guess. Not just me, but a lot of people. But anyway, I was a very quiet person, and I think it just hit me all at once. My mom passed away. She was only 54 when I was 20. And she was, despite the fact that she had issues with the drink, she was the kindest, most loving person. She was my biggest fan, made all my clothes, and took great care of me. So that was hard. So, but I spent 5 weeks in the hospital, and I made a great recovery. And but it took a while. You don't just kind of recover from depression. It's something I had to learn to live with for the rest of my life. Still do. And but that was the first time I realized, there was help out there, and I got, it was an amazing facility, and I got the help I needed. I learned a lot about depression and anxiety then, and that's what's helped me, I think, survive over the years. I didn't always get it right. Sometimes I didn't pay attention to the warning signs, or I was in, maybe I was in an abusive work situation 10 years ago, and I got very sick again. That was the sickest I've gotten probably in my life. And but since then, I got sober 8 years ago, and my mental health has been great since then. And it's kind of it's no coincidence, the alcohol was, I was using that to medicate myself, I think, from the depression and anxiety, and when bad things happened. So I decided that, like, so how can I've been very lucky. I've had a great life. I've done 8,000 shows. Um, I have a beautiful family, four lovely children, and a beautiful wife. And despite, dealing with depression and anxiety throughout the years, and alcohol addiction, which came much later in my life, by the way,
Mm,
um, I've had a great life. And I said, so how can I help people who are stuck, people who are running into problems? And I started doing a motivational talk called Shine the Light. And it was just using I'm a speechwriter as well, so I was able to use that skill, and I love giving speeches. And as you can tell, I love to talk. And so how can I use that skill, my music, which I'm going to play a tune for you in a little bit, and just my knowledge of depression, anxiety, and addiction. How can I use that to help people who maybe weren't lucky enough, or you didn't have the opportunity to get the help that they need? And that's it. I could go on and on, but that's how it started,
mm,
and then that led to me during COVID, becoming a professor at the College of Medicine in Texas A&M University, and I teach a class there called Mental Wellness in Times of Crisis, and I teach a class on suicide prevention, because a lot of doctors are dealing with in crisis situations, much like some of your people are. And the doctors, they always want to do the right thing. Sometimes doctors get a bad rap. You say, "Oh, they're making so much money." If after talking to doctors for the last 4 years, I can tell you, it's not all about the money. Some of these people are so driven to put in crazy hours that none of us will put in, no matter how much money you are making, and they extend themselves so much. And sadly, uh, almost 75% of them experience burnout. In some specialties, it's 90% are higher, which is crazy when you think about it. The amount of them that actually seek professional help is like 40% or less. They're afraid of losing their job, they're afraid it will interfere with promotion and all that. So that's the sad. So that's kind of what led to the work, you know, that I'm doing. And then I started working with a friend of yours, I believe, that um, where I'm helping lawyers around the world who are dealing with the Afghan refugees and Ukrainian and Syrian and refugees. And so these people are experiencing high burnout as well. So I'm trying to help them using the skills that I've developed from working with doctors, not just at Texas A&M, but around the country, doctors and med students. So that's it. I think that's enough of an introduction, but it gives you the reason why I like to do this work.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing it. You mentioned as you were talking, sort of the warning signs that you recognized in yourself, and I'm interested to if you could talk a little bit more about that and how we can recognize what those signs are in ourselves and others, and when it's time to think about seeking help.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question. It's kind of what I say is it's the crux of the matter, really. So let's say you're starting to feel sad, right? You're having a bad day. You wake up on Monday and you're really sad. Mondays can be tough for any of us, right? No matter, I love my job, my music job. I can't wait every night to get back on stage. I'm playing tomorrow night and I'm already excited and getting ready. And but there's days when I wake up on a Monday morning and I'm very sad. I worry about my career, worry about, like during COVID, I was worried about my family. One of my children had bad anxiety, and that was one of the hardest things for me, just trying to take care of him, making sure he was okay, and the other kids. And so a feeling of sadness is one of the first warning signs. Um, the lack of joy in things that used to bring you joy, you know. Like if you don't hear me playing guitar, on a given day, or maybe over a period of 2 days, there's probably something wrong because it's just my DNA. I've done it since I was 14. I practiced well over an hour a day, every day. And so that's something that brings me joy. But it could be golf for somebody else. It could be sewing. It doesn't matter what it is. But things that normally bring you joy in life, if they're not bringing you joy anymore, then one of the big things is a lack of hope, a feeling that there's nothing to look forward to. And what kind of comes along with that is a fear of the future, you
Mm,
know, and a lack of willingness to get out of bed because you feel that you just don't want to face the day. And I always say the bed is the enemy of mental wellness because you stay in bed and it's almost like drinking to cover something up. It's only worse when you wake up,
mm,
the longer you sleep, and then you can't sleep the next night. So anyway, but that's it. Like staying in bed, trying to avoid starting your day. Um, Another one that's very kind of subtle, but I find it very important to talk about is kind of a self-loathing. When you get to that point where you have no joy, you kind of feel you're a burden on everybody, right? That's a key warning sign that you might be in trouble. And with that comes a kind of a self-loathing where you hate everything about yourself. You feel you're useless, and um, it's a really it's a dire warning sign when you get to that point. and but it's very common. And let me just kind of bring in depression here, because
Mm.
depression is the strangest thing. Uh, it doesn't allow you to see the world through your normal lens. It distorts. Think of it, where I have my glasses here a second. Let's say if I put these on and I didn't clean them, something like that, everything would seem a little bit kind of foggy, or if I
Mm.
put my daughter's glasses on that fit the same, but everything would look different, right? That's what happens with depression. Let's say on a Saturday, you could be fine. You're just having a normal conversation. You're having that joy, playing guitar, golf, sewing, whatever. But then on Monday, all of a sudden, that kind of goes away. And these other glasses, this other lens take precedent. And that's the way you see the world. And like, you never thought about hating yourself or loathing yourself before. And now all of a sudden you are. And these are kind of the sad thing, it can happen fairly quickly. Now, it doesn't all happen together either, and that's where we get in trouble,
Mm.
because you don't just wake up on a Monday morning. I'm just giving you kind of a stark example. It tends to happen over time, and that's where we run into trouble when we say, well, maybe I'm just having a bad day. And, I have an agreement with my psychiatrist, so I only see once a year at this stage. And he
Mm.
told me 2 years ago, I said, Seamus, I don't need to know if I need to see you anymore. He said, you're doing great. You're teaching classes. You seem to be, career's going great. Your music is going great. And you seem to be very happy. And I said, look, I'm not naive to think that this is going to last forever. I know at some stage it's going to hit me. And I said, one day is okay. 2 days are okay. If I have 3 bad days in a row where I outline some of the things I just did to you, Jeannie, if if I have 3 days of that in a row, you're going to get a call from me. And I said, you know me. You know the Seamus Kelleher. You've seen the bad, not the bad Seamus Kelleher. You've seen the sad Seamus Kelleher coming in your door. I said, today you're looking at the happy Seamus. I said, if I run into a problem, I want to be able to call you up so that we can get the sad Seamus back on track, because you know what it looks like for me to be good and to be not so good. So that's where. So they're the kind of warning signs. There are more, but they're the key ones that I like to focus on.
What you were just describing strikes me as something that could possibly be something that one does with a friend too, like to have a buddy and you say, if you don't hear from me in 3 days, or you see me acting like, unusually, do X or Y, and
Yeah,
sort of have that agreement with someone.
yeah, and Jeannie, I'd even take it a step further and say, you, sometimes when we talk about mention the word depression and anxiety, it's like the elephant in the room, right? And you would think in this day and age, with all the celebrities that we know of, with all the politicians, with whoever it is, sports figures that have kind of, like Michael Phelps, right, the great swimmer, who I
Mm.
think he did an awful lot for people suffering from depression, to be honest. But you would think that we could talk about it openly, but for some reason or other, uh, it's not a normalized conversation, and that's one of my biggest advocacy points that I try to do is advocate, have the conversation with somebody, pick somebody that you trust,
Mm.
um, and have the conversation by just voicing some of your concerns, like those feelings I just said. It can already start to relieve the pressure that you're feeling. It still might need, and more than likely it will need, you will need professional help. But by just starting the conversation, I have an organization called the Suicide Prevention Alliance, and our tagline is start the conversation.
Mm.
By not talking about it, it just builds up inside you, and it becomes kind of a cancer that takes over your body and spreads. And but by talking to somebody, you've already taken the first step, and then depending on the severity of it, and that's hopefully if it's somebody that's you really trust and somebody that cares about you, because that would make sense, right? They will recognize that you need help, and you know here's the key. It's asking for help. It's one of the it's one of the hardest things to do for people based on my experience. And here's the saddest thing about that is people that I've met, and this I've talked to people all over the country, every race and creed, every age group. I'm very blessed I get to do that.
Mm.
And I was just talking to my wife about this a few days ago because I came back from a cross country trip, and I said, if you watch the news, you would think everybody's just out for themselves, trying to make as most money as they can, and they don't care about anybody else.
Mm.
I would love you to sit in the car. Well, you probably wouldn't love it, but to sit in the car with me, drive across country. I just did 3,000 miles, 1,500 miles out to Kansas City and back, and from where I live. And I was just blown away. People were doing everything they could for me. People
Mm.
are, and these are people at a gas station in a I'd be asking directions or where's there a good diner to go, silly things, and people would almost take you there. And it's the same with our mental health. If you ask somebody to help you, 99% of the time they'll say yes,
Mhm.
and they'll feel I get people ask me all the time, especially with the work I do. I literally got off the phone 5 minutes before we talked. Right, a friend that reached out to me, a musician friend in Nashville, and he's struggling, And I finished the conversation. I said, I'm going to call him John. I said, John, I said, let's pick up this conversation next week. I have some ideas that we should talk about. I said we've somewhat of a similar journey, and I said, I think it'd be helpful for you to have that conversation. And that's it. People are in general very very giving, and when it comes to mental health, um, are very willing to help. But unfortunately, when you're going through that, it goes back to these glasses that I talked about. Um, Sometimes you're afraid to reach out to somebody, and taking that first step is key.
So that raises a question for me. I think you're talking about if the individual who's struggling, and taking that step of asking for help, of starting the conversation. Sometimes we're the other person, right, who sees a friend or a colleague who seems to be struggling, but we don't feel comfortable starting that conversation because it seems scary or uncomfortable. So what advice do you give to folks who are seeing someone else maybe having issues? How can they be helpful and not
I'm just Thanks, Jeanne. I'm so glad you asked that question because um, a lot of people feel that way. They don't know where to start, and they're afraid that they're going to lose a friendship by asking, are you? I mean, the ultimate question will be if you're really worried about somebody, are you suicidal? Are you thinking about killing yourself? Now, let's hope it doesn't ever get to that point with anybody here. But let's say it does. And you're saying to yourself, Jeanne is sitting there saying, I'm afraid of losing my friend, uh, my friendship by asking this question. The person will never talk to me again, and then I'm no use to them. My answer to that is going to sound a bit crass, but it's very real. And it's like, I will sacrifice a friendship any day before I'll sacrifice a friend or
mm,
before I lose a friend.
mm,
I'd much rather take the risk, you know. It's kind of the same thing. I know of very few cases in all the work I've done where somebody has done an intervention and kind of had that conversation, difficult conversation, where it's backfired. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, Jenny.
mm,
I'm not saying that at all. But once again, the percentages, I mean, if it was something that happened a lot, I'd be saying to you, maybe you need to be careful about that. But, here's here's just one sentence that can really help to start that conversation, right? Going back to my tagline, because I'm a huge believer in this. So you say, let's say, Jeannie, it's you who's struggling, right? I'd
mm,
say, Jeannie, I really care about you, and I'm a little bit worried. I've seen that you've been a bit sad lately. I know you've been working, with the refugees and all this. And we need to talk. Now, there's no real script for that, right? But so somebody said, "What did he just say?" I should write that down because that sounds like a good way to start the conversation. All you have to remember is, "I really care about you, and I'm worried about you." Nothing that's going to come out of your mouth after saying that is going to be wrong,
mhm,
right? Because you preface it by saying, "I care about you. I'm worried about you." If it's somebody closer than that, say, "I love you. I care about you. I'm worried." And but you get the idea. But by doing that, you've already set um, you've already lifted the burden a little bit because now they know the cat is out of the bag. They know that you're worried, and are they going to open up to you? I don't know. We can't tell.
Yeah.
But you've opened the door for them to open up to
Mhm.
you, and that's starting a conversation, and that's 90% of the battle.
Well, and I can say as someone who also lives with depression that sometimes the answer that I might give to that would be I can't talk about it right now, but the fact that you asked means I know that I can later come back when I'm ready to and talk about it because you've opened that door.
Yeah, and then the other thing, and I'm sorry to know that you've dealt with that, because it's hard, right? There's no sugarcoating that, and but the thing is, as a friend, then you have to be kind of fairly persistent. You know, if I go through this guy, the guy I just got off the phone with a few minutes ago, if I went through my text with him, um, it, sometimes I think maybe I'm being too aggressive because I know he's not one to talk that easily. But it was like at least 7 texts that got us to the call today,
Yep.
and I could hear it in his voice. He was nervous. At the end of the conversation, he didn't want to get off the phone, right?
Mm.
And that's why I said, um, we'll continue it next week. And so I think, if it's a friend and somebody you're concerned about, you might have to be persistent and you might have to find a way, maybe say, look, I want to meet you for a cup of coffee anyway. And,
Mm.
and you can even say, we don't have to talk about this, but let's meet for a cup of coffee. But you've already opened the door. So I think it's a powerful thing. And I've, in my own personal life, I've had tremendous success, but I've had to be a bit persistent. That's one of the, if you knew me, um, that's one of the characteristics, good or bad. I'm persistent. I can be a pain in the neck, I'm sure, with people, but I think I get good results.
I wanted to go back to that statistic that you mentioned about how 90% of the doctors experience burnout, but only 40% seek help.
Yep.
And I'm curious, in your experience working with doctors and others, doing this, working in these long-term crises, what is it that either makes the difference, or what are the things that could help push, you know, toward more people who are feeling burnout asking for help?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to that conversation, right? When you're talking to somebody that's experienced and saying, you don't have to live like this,
Mm.
because a lot of time it's accompanied by depression, right, or some form of depression, or anxiety, or both, which is kind of lethal.
And the tremendous commitment you were talking about, that feeling that there's a duty that has to be met, right? And so how can
Yeah,
I step back and take time when I have to do the work?
yeah, and it kind of leads us into a few things here, but let's kind of address that directly. So
Mhm.
these are doctors; they're on the, in terms of, especially during COVID, they're on the front lines, as were some of the nurses, by the way, that I dealt with. It wasn't just doctors. And it's really important, like when I'm talking to them, what I stress, I said, look, the work you do is so important. And I said, and I give them the statistic right back at them. I say, I know most of you, and that depends on, like, once again, I need to qualify this. This depends what specialty they're in. But I said, let's say in heart surgery is a great example. There's a very high burnout rate there. And I say, um, statistically, 70 or 80, so if there's 10 people on the call, 7 or 8 of you are struggling right now.
Mm.
And I said, you don't have to live like that, with the proper help. And it might be just taking a break. It might be seeing a psychiatrist and making sure that everything is in line with your mental health. And um, then it might be some form of therapy that is all that you need, or else, and it might be some medication, or some combination of all. And that's for a psychiatrist to figure out. They're the experts. Once again, I'm not a medical expert. I've
Mhm.
struggled with depression all my life and anxiety and addiction. It doesn't make me an expert. I see myself as the traffic cop. Whereas if somebody calls me reaches out to me, I say, listen to my story. If it resonates with you, you might want to get help, and this is where you go. That's the extent of my medical expertise.
Mm.
But going back to these doctors, and I say to them, you know, you're not going to be able to continue the pace you're at um, if you don't get help. Now, I would imagine some of your listeners will be, this might resonate with them, right? Because the the work that your folks are doing is extraordinary under any circumstances. But it's almost like never ending right now between Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen. I mean, we could go on, right? I'm missing somewhere, and the Ukraine, and it's not going to end anytime soon. There's not too many people that are willing to do this work. Your people are. So we can't, if you all burn out in the next 6 months, we can't just replace you. If my doctors at Texas A&M, my 100 whatever it is, 160, 180 doctors that I deal directly with, if they burn out, and that's what I tell them, right? They say, if you all burn out, we don't have enough med students coming online to replace you. And they're going to be too young. They're only starting their careers.
Mm.
So what I say, we need you to take care of yourself.
Mhm.
And here's a word that you're probably going to hear a lot. I'd probably say it 10 times in the next 5 minutes. You need to set boundaries,
Mm. Mhm.
right? And so what do you mean by boundaries, Seamus? By boundaries, I mean, if you're helping people who are struggling in, let's just pick Afghanistan, right? So I know I've heard some of the stories. I've talked to lawyers just a few weeks ago who were dealing with people in Afghanistan. At one point, they told me that the Taliban were outside the door. They were on the phone with the people. So, how much more real can I get? And I'm sure some of your people are dealing with something similar from time to time. Hopefully, not nothing as dire as that. And they said, well, I have to help them. I have to do this and I have to do the other. And they're getting up at 2, 3, 4. They never turn their phone off.
Mhm.
You know, I get it, right? These lawyers are doing this work pro bono, which means that they've already probably put in, I've never met a lawyer that doesn't put in 10, 12 hours a day, right? Especially in their early parts of their career. And beautifully, I should say, a lot of these people are very young. And so they're putting in 10, 12 hours a day. Then they're getting on the phone, talking to somebody who's in crisis. And then that might go on for hours. Then they go to bed. And then they wake up in the middle of the night and get on the phone again.
Mm.
I'm just going to say right now, it's not sustainable. I
Mhm.
applaud that you're doing it. I get up in the middle of the night and talk to people. It's great. But it happens maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks, maybe.
Mhm.
It's not sustainable to do that every day. And so you say, well, you can't just tell somebody from Afghanistan who the Taliban are outside the door that you can't help them. And this is where you have to figure out a strategy. Maybe it's two people dealing with that person, so it's not you
Mhm.
dealing with that. And you're going to say to me, that's very complicated. I don't care if it's complicated. There is no other way. You
Mhm.
can't do it. And let's say you have a vacation planned with your family to go to, where would be a nice place? Vermont in summer, right?
Mhm.
And let's say you've been working 50 weeks a year and you've been doing all this great work with the refugees, and you said, I really can't do it because I know there's this case coming up. you know, you have to start making decisions, find ways to get coverage, find ways to co-brand is something I often use, but probably the wrong message. But I think you get the idea, where there's somebody um, duplicating the effort because you can't do it all yourself, so that you can take that vacation with your family in Vermont. Because what you have to remember is your family, probably for the last 50 weeks, have been worried about you because of
Mhm.
the work that you're doing.
Mhm.
They need to see that you're okay, and you say to yourself, but I really want to do this, I need to help people. But there comes a point where what what by you not taking care of your own self, it's not just interfering with your own mental health, it's interfering with your family, your loved ones, your kids, you know. And I had a great co-worker years ago. I was working in this it was a what do you call franchise, recruiting franchise organization, and one of the top franchise owners was a guy
Mm.
Todd Govitt. And one day I was talking to him, and I really admired this guy. He always had great words of wisdom. And I said, Todd, tell me something that's going to help me. I said, I'm looking to kind of evolve as a human being. And he says, don't be so quick to say no. And I said, what do you mean? He said, let me give you an example. Last week, my dad asked me to go out golfing with him. And immediately I said no. Because I had some client meetings that day. That's exactly what he said to me. I'll never forget it.
Mm.
It was over breakfast at a place in Hawaii, a big awards ceremony, and I was the last thing I expected to come out of this guy's mouth. And he said, Seamus, I went up to my office. He said, I cried. He said, my dad is, at that time, was in his late 70s. He said, I don't know how many more days I have to play golf with my dad.
Mm.
He said, I called him back and I said, Dad, I'm sorry. Let's pick a good tea time. And he went and played. I have taken that advice so many times because I have so many things that I do with my classes at Texas A&M, my suicide prevention classes, and these kind of calls I have with you and people like you. And I hope it's obvious, I love to do this. But I've had to say no a few times, even to calls that were very important. And there was sometimes money involved that I could have used.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that my son Rory, who's graduating this year, needs those times because he asks me to play golf all the time. I'm not a good golfer. But even if I go out and play, and sometimes this is what happens, the golf course is not far from us. I'll go out and play 7 or 8 holes, and then I'll say, Rory, I do need to go now. And
Mm.
he's quite happy with that because I've shared that hour and a half, 2 hours with him.
Mm-hmm.
And, you kind of coach me how to play and all these different things. So I'm just giving you two examples. You all have examples in your own life. I might ask yourself, how many times have you said no
Mm.
because of the work you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
And once again, I'm not saying that you can just switch off. I'm not suggesting that. Let's be real here. But it gets down to setting some boundaries so that you can continue to do the work. It's great work you're doing. We love that you're doing, and I could sit here and give you every accolade. You know, just know that I do that, but also know that it should never be at the expense of your own mental health. Because if you can continue to take care of yourself, set those boundaries, make sure you allow time for yourself to regenerate, to kind of uh, get get your mental health along with your physical health in order. It's only then that the work you do is sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Well, and your what you've been talking about reminds me that there was a point when we were talking in a group. I'm getting an echo. I don't know if you are. Where someone said that they had set some boundaries of taking some time off or not being available, and they felt really guilty about it. And then the Afghan family they were working with said, of course of course you have to take time off and be with your family. That's natural, that's normal. And so it's like, even when we sometimes that feeling is something we impose on ourselves, when others around us would completely understand it, the need for it.
Absolutely, and you're 100% right there, and that's the advice I often give to people that are getting overworked, and we had that similar situation with my family lately. My wife needed some time to go. We lost her dad recently, and she needed time with her mom. And her boss said, "Maribel, you don't even have to ask. You know, it's nice of you to ask." He said, "Take the time you need. We're going to be okay." And within an hour, all of her co-workers had sent her an email saying, "Maripat, don't worry about this. This is in order. This is in." And I think it goes back to what I just said. People are very compassionate. People are willing to help you, but sometimes it goes back to asking for help with your mental health. But then it goes into asking for the people that you work with, other colleagues, or someone said, look, can you help me? Because we do have this Afghan family that need help. I do have this thing in Vermont that I promised the family. I said, and don't be afraid to say, I think I
Mhm.
really need it, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
And so speaking of needing something, I need to play guitar just for 1 second. I promise I won't play for too long, but
Oh, you told us you would, so.
this is one of my favorite songs. Very appropriate. The summertime is coming. The leaves are gently blooming, and the wild mountain thyme grows around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go? And we'll all go together to pick wild mountain thyme all around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go? I will build my love a bower near yon blue crystal fountain, and on it I'll build all the flowers of the mountain. Will you go, lassie, go? And we'll all go together to pick wild mountain thyme all around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go?
That's beautiful. Thank you.
See, already I feel better after doing that.
I do too. And in
And
fact,
it's kind of practice what I preach. Kind of, sorry, give me 1 second.
going to your point about what gives you joy, I am a music lover myself. And this morning, I've been using a gratitude journal, and it has you set intentions in the morning and then reflect in the evening. And this morning, one of my intentions was listen to music today. So
So
that
I checked that box for you.
helped me check that box. Well, we're supposed to keep these talks to 30 minutes, and we're well over that. But it kills me to stop the conversation because it's lovely to listen to you. We covered, I think, some really important ground in terms of, of warning signs, in terms of how to ask for help and how to offer help, and also how to set boundaries and the importance of that. Anything else you'd like to add as sort of parting words of advice to the Afghan evac volunteers?
Yeah, no, it's the same advice I really give to anybody that I talk with, and that is, you know, we're pretty good at taking care of our physical health. Going to the gym, watching the weight, watching all the different things that we need to do, and talking about it very openly. People will talk about every ailment they have during a conversation over dinner, and when it comes to our mental wellness, not so much.
Mm.
And I think just to kind of uh, get better, one of my advocacy points is to kind of put mental wellness on parity with physical wellness. That they're the same thing. One is just physical, one is mental, and but either one needs to be taken care of. And if you just think about it like that, if the work you're doing is taking a toll on it, maybe you need to step away for a while. Maybe you just need to work with somebody to put those boundaries in place. Yeah, maybe you need to step away from it completely. I'm not, you're going to have to decide that, but sometimes that's okay. You don't, we can't, you should never be doing the work you're doing at the expense of yourself, you know. We sometimes hear these hero stories for somebody who can't swim, jumps in to try and save a child or something like that into the water, and then they're gone as well. So now
Mm.
there's more grief involved. So,
Mm.
we can't add, these are kind of very difficult situations you deal with. We don't need to add to it. We don't need you as a victim. We need you, there's enough victims, right? We need you to take care of yourself so you can be in this for the long haul. And you can also have a healthy and happy life despite what you're dealing with. Be proud of the work you're doing. Be very proud of it. You know, a lot of us are not doing that. A lot of people are not doing that. You're helping in great way. Be proud of that. Celebrate it. When you go on application to Vermont or wherever it is, celebrate what you've accomplished. Don't dwell on the people that you may have lost or the people that you were not able to help. The statistics are you can only help so many people. So that's a focus on the positive, focus on the wonderful work you've done, focus on the people. You've gotten messages from them, I'm sure, who say, you've changed my life. Focus on that. That's what you can control. Some of the other stuff you don't control.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Seamus, for being with us today and for sharing your wisdom that you've gained over the years of both living with these issues and also helping others with them. And just to mention, you had shared with me that you have a website, shinethelight.net.
Yeah.
So if folks want to find out more about you and your work, they can visit that site. But in the meantime, just a big thank you to you for your time today.
You're very welcome. And if you're on that website, shinethelight.net, my email and my phone number is there. And any of your listeners, feel free to reach out to me. Text me maybe is the best thing to do first of all before we, and then if you need to talk to me directly, we'll have a conversation. So please make sure people have my email. I'd be very, very happy to talk with anybody who's struggling. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye bye now.